live. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I've gone live because Bruce mentions in his takedown. What's that? Charging? Because the lights are just about to go out. They're going out for 1 hour. This particular hour. Of course, it's this particular hour. They're going out now.
You should complain to authorities, Gary.
Oh yes,
Write a letter.
That's a long way. Write a letter.
A sternly worded letter.
Sternly worded letter. Yes, it's about time I did that. There's not enough of those in the world, is there? And I don't know why this phone is hello there, Johnny. I'm not sure why it's refusing to charge. Oh, it just gets better and better. Oh, look, he's got his lit drone there.
Looks like a slime drone, doesn't it?
Slime drone, absolutely. Oh, and another guest.
Oh, they're rolling in. Look at them.
They're rolling in.
Hello. I'd have been a bit earlier if I could have been, but I was just having
I started early because I was going to talk to Bruce about his DJI and TikTok for the win. It amazes me that people have only just cottoned on that this is going through the US system. It blows my mind. I do think it's a bit spurious. Hello there, Cool Cat. I haven't got a plentiful supply of electrons. I've got the fantastic. It's an LED bulb which got a little battery in it, and it just switches on and runs for about 3 hours. Works really well.
Emergency lighting, eh?
Yeah, or as we like to call it now, lighting. It's just mad. Yeah, DJI, why are people catching on so late at this? Just because it made a few national newspapers over there? What's your thoughts on that, Bruce?
Oh, no, because it doesn't affect most people, does it? I mean, most people don't fly drones. They don't care.
But it's what I mean by that is, I suppose I should have said it's the American DJI drone community that are just catching on, rather than just general folks there. I don't understand why they've missed it.
Yeah. So, Gary, would you like to recap for the audience what we're talking about?
We're talking about.
What's happening in America? What are they trying to do?
Well, they're trying to get. They're trying to get rid of. A couple of politicians are trying to point out that they shouldn't be using DJI equipment. They're somewhat right-wing politicians that are trying to point this out.
Are they talking about a general ban for the public or just for federal and state authorities?
No, it's general ban, isn't it?
Yeah, one of them is. Yeah, one of the proposals. Yeah, and fair enough too. There's far too many DJI drones. I think give Skydio a go, eh?
Just in the very week that they choose to leave the civil market. Yeah, that's right.
Well, I had a thought. This is some very worrying. Now, if DJI get the hump, if for example the Americans do ban DJI products and DJI get the hump, they could geofence the entire continental USA as a no-fly zone. Where would that leave the DJI users?
I suppose, but I think it's very hard to put this one back in the box, isn't it? It's very hard to stop this now. And Autel have also stopped selling their little sub 250 gram things. I guess the DJI gear just beat them. That's that. No point. 3DR will step in. There you go, John.
So they make it across the border from Mexico.
Exactly. Well, I mean, I think they could throw them across the border from where the factory was and their offices in California. They did look over the border from their American office to the factory, so it wasn't very far away at all. It's not. It's funny enough that the flipping Solo keeps getting mentioned, doesn't it? It's like I see it in lots of places popping up. The odd photo there, here and there. It's like, I don't know, some sort of Renaissance
drone that never dies.
Drone that never dies. Yes, right. I'm trying to add Mark. Are you here? Are you here now, Mark? Are you staying?
I've no idea what the hell was going on then.
Oh, good. Well, we're all in the same situation then. I've no idea what's going on. So, yeah. Yeah.
How are you all this evening?
Very well. How was your first? Has it been your first week of doing your own thing with the light shows?
So in the office building drones, just tinkering away with the old screwdriver. bit of a
How much
settings.
vodka do you put in yours?
No comment.
Indeed. But how much construction is actually done in the office then? Surely you don't build them all, several hundred of them there.
So in the office, the aircraft goes together with about 6 screws, actually. It's designed in such a way it is just 6 screws that hold the whole thing together.
Okay.
So the motherboard, of course, has the flight controller and all the other bits and bobs on it. And then it's just a case of putting that board into the frame, and off you go. And it's only 400 grams. It's tiny little thing.
And then the motors, how do they stay on?
Well, they're bolted on, yes. So there's 6 screws that hold the main body together, and then there's 4 for each motor.
And Think Flight is in the chat. If you haven't, I shouldn't do this, but you should stop watching this now. Go and watch his fantastic free flight rubber band Enormo model aircraft video. Absolutely extraordinary. I don't know. Has everyone seen that one? Don't say it's only me. Just go and watch it. Go and watch it immediately. It really was amazing. It really was a work of art, and of course immediately just triggered, because I think would I be right in saying that every one of us, well, maybe not Bruce, but had those rubber band powered, what were they, Gillos or something like that? I can't remember. Sleek Flight is the name I seem to regret. Was it Pacific Flyer? Those rubber band things you wound up and let go. You made a huge one of those. Oh, have I gone? No, you're muted, you're muted, Bruce.
No, I was just miming.
Stratostreak, that's it. Stratostreak, that's exactly the name. And then it had the foam thing. It had the foam little sort of almost space shuttle, which was very, very hard to come by. And then he came into the shops, everyone's put in there. Pulled it back on the rubber band. There you go. They're amazing things. And he's made a huge version of those. So I would invite you in. If I could, but I can't. Oh, okay. Mark's just saying his internet's playing up. Fair enough, Mark. Let's try and get you back in. Invite guest. No. I can't. No, he's disappeared. Yes, he's disappeared. His internet must have gone down. So, Ian, there's an email address there on under your name, in your namespace, Gatwick Appeal at UAVhive.com. What on earth is that about?
Yes, this is the latest in the Gatwick drone saga of 2018. So, as people know that watch this show regularly, over the years, the many years, the 4 years of torture, I've been doing freedom of information requests around the Gatwick narrative, and generally it's been an absolute fight, some more than others. Sussex police are just the absolute standard of the worst dealings with freedom of information, such to the point that they're in the top 5 police forces complained about to the Information Commissioner, and such that the Information Commissioner themselves has had to kind of been embedded there and is basically trying to correct the way they behave, which, well, the experience I'm having doesn't suggest they're being particularly successful. And then this is what I think is probably a bit of a concern. So I had 3 recent freedom of informations where Sussex police, in fact, I mean, I could do bucket loads more. Some of them I've kind of given up on for now. Just won't even reply to them, where I could really kick off about them. But I'm just trying to just tackle on stuff that I just thought would just be nice to get this out of the way and move on. So I had 3 where they'd all just been immediately, rejected back, just a load of waffle as why they won't reply to them. So I went to the Information Commissioner, and yeah, unfortunately, they'd rejected all three and done it within the space of this month, and they hadn't even really come back themselves with convincing arguments. In fact, even what they came back with suggested they hadn't understood, they hadn't even clicked links, they hadn't really got what I was going on about in the first place. They completely misconstrued some of the evidence that I provided, because obviously I don't go into this thing lightly. I don't just do a few lines. They get 3, 4, 5 pages, screenshots, references to other freedom of information, and so on. So these are things that I spend a great deal of time getting right. You know, it's really building a real case, because I've got to think as well, they're not drone experts, so I'm trying to paint the whole picture for them and give them everything, so they don't have to go away and find everything. So I was a bit frustrated by it, and also the questions are pretty trivial, as you know, Gary. I chatted to you about a couple of them, and one of them, I was basically just getting Sussex Police to define when morning was. So you're asking the police, when's morning? Because we're the same with Gatwick. The drone was flying about until morning. So, you know, is that sunrise? On one day, you know, the airport will be open at 6 a.m. So is it 6 a.m.? You know, I think you said it could go up to 11:59 technically or something, but so it's just really
001 to 11.
Yeah, well, it was just. Can you just define what you meant by morning in a timeline? And the ICA have come back and said that basically, if Sussex Police were to define what morning meant, it would jeopardise their ability to police, essentially, which is just complete nonsense. So I'm having. I find that basically you can go further. So you can go to an appeal court. So I've not been through the process before. So that's quite tough itself, because they waited till 24th, 25th of the month before the last one came back. And you've only got 28 calendar days. And because one was at the start of the month, it literally left me with less than a week to put in 3 appeals. And obviously, as with all stuff, then I'm going to have to, you know, get all the evidence together and take it very seriously, which I have. So I've put 3-4 pages together for each of these. I've reached out to sort of wider people in the industry, like Brendan, formerly of DJI, is writing up something to provide as, you know, again, an expert witness as it was. Philip Rouse at Cube Pilot, yourself, Gary, are going to do something. Actually, Bruce, if you'd like to do a submission as well, that'd be most welcome. So really, I'm asking around. So that's what this email address is. So I would say, if anyone watching is a commercial operator, especially in the UK, absolutely fantastic to hear from you. If you want to do your appeal and not want your name to be on the public record, I can also ask for that to be in confidence, so that only the appeal judge and the legal teams would look at it, but it then won't be published as public record. So you could even just put that in if you really feel that way. But there are a few commercial operators have already come forward and said they'd do stuff. You know, for example, there was a case of commercial operator that was doing filming for Amazon and was shot at with a real gun. And so I want to capture all that, because that's all the negative press that has built up. And really, Gatwick was the key change in the narrative with the press, and that every time anything comes up negative with drones, it's always referred back to. So I just want to capture that, because they're arguing on one hand that you see the public interest comes down to this. They're saying if to weigh up the public interest against Sussex Police, is the concern that anything that they reveal would prejudice a case for prosecuting the pilot that was flying the drone at Gatwick, that we all know probably doesn't even exist. So we're having this silly argument about a court case that will never, ever, in all likelihood, ever take place, because there's likely nobody to answer to this charge in court. But we've just theoretically, we've got to say, well, if there was someone and this went to court and anything was revealed at all, it could prejudice the case, which is, especially with the questions I'm asking, it doesn't add up. So I've got to say, no, there's a public interest. This is the harm that's being done by this not being revealed. You know, the UK, it's reputational damage. It's getting continually from Gatwick. There's reputational damage from the fact there's all this there's such a fight to actually reveal any information. The fact there's no transparency, the fact there's no evidence being provided itself just makes the UK look particularly incompetent and like it is covering something up. And the ICO even say themselves, if there is evidence of wrongdoing, that is an especially powerful case for public interest. Now, there is evidence of wrongdoing with Gatwick. For starters, you've got the fact that the Leonardo they put into the public, the fact that they said there was no rogue drone, it conflicts with the evidence of Sussex Police. You've then got Giles York, the then Chief Constable of Sussex Police, telling a Parliamentary Defence Committee that no photos exist of the drone. And yet the Freedom of Information has recorded with the DFT that for certain London Gatwick Airport had photographs from the first day that they provided, and those went to the counter-terrorism unit, and they went to the Ministry of Defence. So that in itself is evidence of wrongdoing, because Giles York has misled a parliamentary committee on what evidence they have had. And then you've also got the fact that we've got, significant civil servant within the DFT, Stephen Roberts, who went on Twitter and he said that he knew what really happened. And further still, he was going to tell his mates down the pub. Now, what kind of democracy is it where you can go down and have a chat with your mates at the pub about something, but the rest of public isn't allowed to know about it? That in itself, again, is wrongdoing. He himself is committing wrongdoing, possibly breaching Official Secrets Act. So all of that is, no, there is a public interest now, a genuine one. But what I want to do is fight that by getting input from people, to say that actually, no, this is reputational damage. It's affecting me, that it's given a negative impression about drones that's still being utilised to this day. It's part of the narrative. It's part of what the arguments are being, not just in the UK, but abroad, for bringing in regulation. I'll be surprised if it doesn't get brought up when remote ID is forced upon us. So with all that, there is an argument, not to say it's done the drone industry, but I want to try and get wide as well. So I've already got an academic that's put in submission. I'm trying to get another one that was former investigative journalists. And really, so I'm trying to get a few people dotted around outside of the drone industry as well, to say actually there's a public, this really needs to be answered. And obviously we know passengers were affected. The airline industry was affected. In fact, if there's anyone on here that works in the airline industry or knows someone that works in the airline industry, it'd be really great to hear from them as well, because it's that was a financial impact.
If all else fails, we crowdfund a defamation case on behalf of all the drone owners and take it to the courts.
I don't know. I don't know enough about it to know if it's viable, but yeah. I mean, I feel there's the genuine public interest there, and we need to argue it. And so basically, I'm putting that 3 appeals. So I'm doing an appeal for each one. You can actually have these heard in court. I have it heard on paper. So I'm having these done on paper, because obviously I don't think I can even have them in Yorkshire. So it'd be me travelling out in my own work time, my expense, being in court to do it, when I can put the evidence together anyway. So I'm going to do that. But I think if all these get knocked back, then a future one, and I may see someone like Richard Ryan to see if he wants to be involved, and we actually stand up in court and we have expert witnesses there, video link, and just throw the whole works at it, because enough's enough now. This needs to come to an end. And these are very straightforward questions. We're supposed to be in a democracy, and the Freedom of Information Act is supposed to work, and it is not working.
Do you really think that politicians, police, and others are held to the same level of or standards of account as we are? There's not. There's 2 sets of rules.
No,
if you're in power,
the Freedom of Information Act was put there to address that, and
it was put there to give the public a feeling that something would happen when it was never happened. It's just it is an illusion, isn't it?
Well, it isn't. It has worked. It has worked against ministers. I'm sure it's got stuff out when Labour were in power. It has done with the Conservatives now, where they would have preferred that didn't come out. At the same time, some stuff just got out through plain leaks, which is often the case as well. But I mean, at the end of the day, though, this is the way of testing it with the Freedom of Information Act. When it isn't working, you take it to these appeals, and these appeals will, there'll be some that find in favour still of the ICO. There'll be some that won't. But at the end of the day, there is nothing to lose, And then the good thing is, the evidence at Gatwick now is going to be it's going to be under the eyes of legal people, and it's going to be part of an argument. And that itself, so it's going to be public record. So that itself's getting out there. We're putting out the facts that are there, bringing them all together and saying, this is fact of what happened. This is fact of what happened. This is fact. This is fact. And you can't dispute it because it's all there as part of the freedom of information. And we can bring out stuff that, a senior member of the DFT has put this into the public domain and so on. Put it all out there. We could put what Leonardo said and say, there's your evidence, argue it. If nothing else, it's got the potential to embarrass some people, maybe, make them a little bit uncomfortable. And then that in itself, a little step forward. And then it sets the stage as well for saying, well, if these get knocked back, let's take another one and let's throw even more at it. So we'll see what happens. All I could do is try and say, and there is the email address, and if people will put in a few extra bits of evidence that there's a public interest there, it'd be very good if it'd be nice. We'll see. I mean, I've reached out to on Twitter, probably Healy at Manor and stuff, for people actually in industry, if they'll just speak up and say, because if you imagine if you were trying to do drone deliveries in a country that's made itself very paranoid and anti-drone, it doesn't help you. It doesn't help your business model. And it's probably worth moving on to what we know has happened in court. Just what we found out in the last few days that's come about, probably to an extent, for the fact there is such a negative view of drones in the UK that it's easy to argue a legal case negatively about drones and actually win.
The problem is it's become folklore now. It's become ingrained in the history of drones. And even if they do find there was no drone and all the information is released, it'll be a tiny footnote on page 23 of the Daily Mail.
Well, at least then, actually, you can go back to all the stories and you can get them all to do corrections. BBC do press complaints on a lot of them, include the evidence. So you can have a little bit of mischief there.
But they'll just say they were reporting on the basis of the facts that were available at the time, and that's it.
But well, you can't get away with that because if they've been doing it even recently, and if the Guardian stories and that's been out, so all the information has come out, they've chosen not to absorb. And that's how the Sun can never ever justify the fact that it used a photograph of a helicopter, knowing it was a photograph of a helicopter, and documented it as being a drone. Stuff like that, even without this case, is arguable, and it's on my to-do list to do press complaint on that. So. And I would say go back to the Gatwick balloon incident of recent. There were quite a few journalists that immediately said, this is nonsense. It's just like 2018 all over again. It didn't happen. So the very fact you've got journalists, they're saying this, and they're feeling no loss of credibility, no shame from it. None of them feel like you've got to hide and say this because there is no evidence. And it's actually more, I think it's almost easier for people to actually say, no, there wasn't any evidence because there is no credibility to it. So that was interesting. And we did get the likes of the Telegraph, where they actually didn't rush the story out. They started it a few days and they looked into it and they said, actually, it was balloons. And they could have just straight away said, you know what, it was a drone. It said that was an easy story to do. It was a harder story to wait and say it was balloons, and they did it. So it's showing that the tide has turned since 2018, and there's really no harm in pulling it apart some more, because if nothing else, you are stopping nonsense like this from happening in future and from having the impact. And people will now will say no, it's rubbish. And in fact, the drone community themselves, when the balloon incident happened, they were on Twitter and they were on the BBC story and all that, and they're saying nonsense. You've done this before. This is nonsense. And people saying that it's balloons. So people were a lot more willing now to stand up, when in 2018, we're all a bit naive about it. We all kind of, although we were chiming ourselves and in social media and saying this doesn't add up, we all thought, well, back at Heathrow when it was the plastic bag, that came out in the watch and it was said, and we all thought, well, the right thing will happen. The truth will come out at the end of this. And if it wasn't a drone, they'll say it wasn't a drone. None of us thought, actually, they'll just ignore it all and just hope we all
Yeah.
forget.
So why didn't the BBC take a balloon, wrap it in a lead brick, and then show how dangerous they are to aircraft by shooting it out of a cannon?
Shooting out of a cannon. Yeah, yeah. That's
Oh,
a reference to those that don't know to a test that was basically done
BBC
a few
Horizon
years ago, where they minced what was it? They minced a load of Phantoms or something together, didn't they? And then put them in a tube.
Yeah, carbon rod, I think they even put in there, and then fired it at a small aircraft wing. But in the context they'd done beforehand, they made you think this was an airliner, and that really they were saying a drone could knock one of them out of the sky. It was really quite misleading. And we had the panorama as well. Panorama ended on a drone with a machine gun being shown, trying to present that as a real drone, and it was actually a marketing video campaign done for Call of Duty. And I immediately hit on Twitter the producer of Panorama on that, and even linked it, and she didn't reply because she probably thought, oh bloody hell, I didn't realise we'd done that. They could have had a press complaint against them really easily. In fact, maybe when I catch up and do these things, maybe I should do that as well.
I should just say hello to everyone in the comments. I'm not chatting back because I'm on my phone and I can't. It doesn't let me comment. So I'm not ignoring you. I'm sorry. I'm just I'm ignoring. No. So yeah. Hello to everyone in the chats. Yeah. Well, do we lead on to the thing that we know has happened with which I don't know if Bruce is aware of. There's, I believe, going on the books is drone trespass now. But you can comment. Yes, you can comment. Yeah, drone trespass. Oh, you sod! You got me there. I can't look. No hands. Yeah, drone trespass. What do you know about that, Ian?
Well, I only know a little bit because obviously with this appeal going on, I was actually speaking to Richard Ryan, who's a former CAA legal, who's now an independent barrister that's in sort of the counter-drone space for any legal actions that take place. So I was actually speaking to him about the Gatwick appeal and that process and seeing if he wanted to do a submission. I think he will drop in a submission, but I'll have to give him a nudge. But while I was doing that, I was also having a chat about a friend that's having an issue with a neighbour that's got a drone. Whereas I'd said to him first, just give it some time, he'll get bored of it. But they've got a bit of history with this neighbour where they've really badly fallen out. So it might end up where the drone becomes deliberately being used as a nuisance. So I just wanted to have a word with Richard about that, about what do I do if he decides to escalate things. And he said, well, actually, now you mentioned that, there's just been a legal case. So there has been a case that's been tried where the judgment has meant that trespass by overflight is now something that can be pursued in the UK. So this is civil law. So if you wanted to pursue it, obviously it's going to involve you spending some money. So I don't expect that old Joe Public, Joe Blogs will be using this unless he's a particularly bitter NIMBY with pockets that are as large as his rage. So I think it'll be mainly companies that will use this, but obviously that's a concerning precedent to be set. So unfortunately, Richard's out of. He lives in Scotland, which I assumed he lived in London with his previous job, but he's not there at the minute, and he hasn't got a regular access to the internet, so he can't actually go. I think what he wants to do is write a big piece on this on LinkedIn and explain it all ins and out. So he hasn't got time to do that yet. So unfortunately, I can't go too much in because obviously I was thinking about what's going on in my world and what I need to sort out. So I didn't even ask for the case citation because obviously I could have otherwise put that out and people could have dug in and done a bit of research in the time being. So I have to apologise for that. But it wasn't one of those things you were expecting to come up just in the conversation. But yeah, that's the situation at the moment. So it'll be good to get him maybe on next week's show or whenever he's available. And then delve into the detail of that, because obviously that's a fundamental change. But I do think that the fact that these kind of things get through court, and that has been enabled by the fact that we've allowed such a negative opinion of drones, where a judge looking at this just thinks, oh, those bleeding nuisance things, and will probably things that are very unreasonable end up then becoming law, and that's
This is a fantastic opportunity. I mean, a drone is an aircraft. So what you do now is you buy a house that's overflown off the end of a runway at an international airport. You sue British Airways and all of them, and you make a fortune, pay for the house, holiday home in the Bahamas. There we go.
Unfortunately, no, it never works like that. A drone is a drone a drone is an aircraft when it suits the regulator, and the moment it doesn't, and it doesn't suit anyone, it's a toy, and it's always used misappropriately.
We have all the responsibilities of aircraft and none of the privileges.
Exactly. So you got it.
Yeah.
So,
I can't believe that's been allowed to be carved out. I cannot. I thought there was a part of the Civil Aviation Act in the UK that stopped people doing that for exactly the reason Bruce has suggested, that it would kill aviation. So and once again, the industry in the UK doesn't get annoyed about it. And there's similar things will happen in other countries. Other countries are available, and other countries are going to face the same problems. But we don't get up in arms about it. It's terrible.
No, I mean, we'll see what pans out from it. I mean, I got the impression, but we'll have to see when Richard goes into it. But I got the impression it was some sort of landlord, and that it was concerned about trespass on his property. So it might have been urban explorers. So it's probably, I don't want people coming in with cameras, and then obviously drones get caught up in all of that, because they've been quite common now for urban explorers, as well as using handheld cameras to use a drone. But then obviously it opens the floodgates now where,
my mind.
Yeah, it's open floodgates now where the main concern with this will be councils. At the end of the day, they're just spending taxpayers' money and see it as a bottomless pit of money to be able to spend. And they'd have no problem just saying, look, you're not have a fine, and if you do, we'll do you for trespass, and we can put the money, they can put the money into getting solicitors to do it.
Can you trespass in a public place though?
Well, you'd have to argue, is it a public place? If the council owns something, they'll say it's council land. I guess if you say it's actual public realm, and it's between a lot of private businesses, and there's a footfall there, but I don't know.
As an auditor, I know that trespass is a civil case, and you must be asked to leave. You can't just be trespassed without having been told to leave in the first place.
Yeah, well, who knows? I mean, if that's the case, it might strengthen things. But I guess the fact is, with a lot of this, you've got to go and ask permission, and when people are being difficult, we've heard it before with councils. They've said, well, we can't stop you, but if we do it, we will have a go at the production company. We'll make your life hard for you in this way. Well, now they can say, we're not giving you permission, and if you ignore that, we'll consider it to be trespass and take the action. So it's another tool in their arsenal to be difficult that wasn't there before. And really, we could do it if the UK wants to be, heading towards the future that other countries are heading for, to have drone delivery. Whatever use cases are out of it, it is making that more difficult. It's putting more hurdles in the way. We're doing more.
That's a good thing.
Well,
so we don't drone deliveries. Drone deliveries junk. Yeah, more of this, please. More of this.
It's what I always refer back to, the Red Flag Act with the cars. We're just doing more than that. In fact, all we're doing now is going, give them a bigger flag. Don't just red. Let's put a light on it.
And 300-watt remote ID transmitters. That's what they need. 7 kilos of remote ID broadcast.
Remote ID is really in the UK. Yeah. I mean, it's. I think it's coming here as well. Our Civil Aviation Authority are very excited to tell us that new things are afoot, and they're going to announce it all very soon. So, oh God, I think I know what that is, and it'll be terrible. It'll be absolutely terrible here.
Remote anonymity, that's the future.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You've got to have a very strong use case now for it. There's not an environment where you could think, oh, maybe I can. I think the European ticket, the very simple ticket for basic commercial operation, is a good idea. Lets you dip your toe in the water. You think you can make a fortune. You buy a Mini and see how it goes, and that gets you started. because then the next leap is up to what you need. So you bought your LiDAR equipped thing because you know the sensors you need for the data that you require. So that's a hammer that you know what you're going to buy for your business. And there's a hinterland between that place and entry level stuff where people have got to be given the opportunity to make their way up through and see if it's really going to work.
Yeah, but remember, remote ID would have enabled them to catch that guy that was flying the drone at Gatwick.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, all day long, every day, all day, every
so
day.
there's definite upsides.
Really, what we need to do is the old Monty Python sketch as all around, where instead of all going how hard life was, how bad our countries are with regulating about drones. So we can have someone from Canada going, "Oh, it's so bad because of this and that." But I think at the moment with the UK, I'd still keep winning, for the least for the time being.
Oh, I don't know. Funnily enough, I don't know what is the situation in Canada. I haven't bothered looking at that for a while.
Well, sub 250 still free of prescriptive rules. No remote ID required. It's the best country in the world for sub 250. You can do BVLOS.
You don't, and as long as you're not a member of the Model Aircraft Association, there you can crack on as long as you got your ticket, isn't it? You've got to have your.
Yeah, you don't need a ticket for sub 250 though. If you're flying a Mavic Mini. The DJI Mini, you can do whatever the hell you like, wherever you like, outside a flight restricted area, so long as you don't endanger people or property. So BVLOS, night flying, the whole lot's all allowed. And look at all the deaths and disaster that's caused. Having that freedom.
Absolutely filled. And talking of deaths and disasters, you lot were flying at the field last weekend, I think, were you? We had a video of that, and good to see the Ron's back in the chair, and he's got a wonderful new fast car. I mean, that was
it's a new EV. That'll keep him going.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But you were having regulatory humps and bumps, and what about your not being in Model Wings New Zealand anymore, or whatever it's called? How's that?
Well, I'm no longer a member of Model Flying New Zealand, so I can't fly within 4 kilometres of an airfield without supervision by someone who holds wings because. I can't fly, and I don't remember the rules anymore because I haven't paid money. But it's just situation normal. Nothing's changed. Nobody's died. I think there are some pragmatic perspectives on this now, as opposed to a few years ago when they were trying to chase everyone and anyone. If I pose a danger to someone, I will get beaten up for it, and if I don't, I'm good.
Johnny's got a 4M16S Skyhopper. It's 182 grams. And how long does it fly for, Johnny? Yeah, I think, there's a lot can be done sub 250. Bruce even made an airplane years ago, back before people even knew what 250 was about.
And I flew it into myself and didn't die.
That's right.
But I'm sure it gave me Parkinson's.
Oh dear. Oh, shame.
But it's interesting from the regulatory perspective. Everybody's changing new regs and things. New Zealand was supposed to have its new regulations in place a year ago. And then they were supposed to be put in front of Parliament at the beginning of this year for passing in the third quarter. Well, now we're into the third quarter and this still hasn't even been put. They haven't even decided what they're going to do yet. But registration, of course, is high on the list because our Civil Aviation Authority has a view that they're going to produce this UTM and it's going to be sold to everybody in the world. The entire world will adopt their UTM. And to do that, we'll need some kind of conspicuity for drones and things. And it's just so many people have so many big, ridiculous dreams in this industry.
Yes. Yeah, I'll agree with you slightly. I think it's getting a little bit more realistic, but the people that manage to shout the loudest do have the most unrealistic.
Yeah, how many wannabe UTM companies are there in the world now? There's still an awful lot of them, and they all claim to have the best thing since sliced bread.
And this week was a very week of the other Richard. Everyone seems it's 2 Ians, 2 Richards, 2 whatever. Richard from Altitude Angel, I actually emailed him today about that because I said, what is it with this week and so many news releases from UTMs? And he hadn't noticed. There've been so many.
Well, they're trying to remain relevant. The problem is that this promise.
Do you really think that's what it is?
Well, look at it. We were promised delivery drones, flying taxis years ago. We don't see any of it yet. So the need for a UTM is still there's nothing to UTM yet.
I hadn't thought about it like that. It's still going to remain relevant. I shall I shall give that some consideration. Frequentis rolled out something in Lithuania today, and it's all these sort of things. This one's done this one's done that. But yeah, you do have to think, well, what does that mean in the big scheme of things? And what is what's this doing? I still refuse to register. I see a risk assessment file. Yeah.
The thing is, what's going to happen in 5 years' time when we still don't have drone delivery, we still don't have eVTOL flying pilotless taxis? The people pouring money into these UTM ventures are going to start saying, oh, hang on a minute, when are we getting our return? We're already a decade behind. When are we getting some money back? And at some point in time, they say, I'm sorry, we're taking our money out of this. We're investing in AI because that's got a future.
I suppose they could also be looking at the AAM, the flying taxis market, and seeing them all really beginning to back up on their promises of, hey, it'll be this time next year we'll all be flying in them because of their airworthiness. So there must be a lot of money beginning to flow out of that market.
As they say in the VC industry, someone's going to cash a reality check.
Someone's going to cash.
Yeah, be a run on the bank.
Maybe you're absolutely right. I hadn't thought about this at all in this context. They must be seeing what's going on there. Going, oh blimey.
And I'm honest when I say I'm pretty sure that the growth in AI and the amount of money flowing into AI ventures at the moment makes less money available for other ventures, especially things that are now 5 years behind their promised deliveries. VC venture capitalists are not there to be your friends. They're there to make money. And if you're not delivering, they pull the money and put it somewhere else.
And again, I was a bit ranty about this last week, wasn't I? But it's sort of all just, there's no doubt that we do need a modern digital sky, and none of us are against safety. It's quite a good thing. And we seem to be wasting time and not getting there quickly. We're just having new ideas, and as you say, greatest things in sliced white bread. No, don't do it like this. Do it like this, or like that, or that, or that, or that, or that. Come on, let's have a consensus, and let's start moving in a direction.
Because we don't even know how all this data is going to be handled, what a UTM actually will do, what form it will take, and whether it's going to be like Altitude Angel, where it's basically a passive thing, or whether it's going to be an active thing. So we're wanting to build systems before we've even actually got the final specification completed, and we end up with another ADS-B. By the time we're getting around to use it, it's already out of date.
Yeah. It's I can't remember even who it was, but they posted a 77-mile, the longest flight ever in the world ever, a BVLOS via 5G. It's like, what? 77 miles? Come on, come back when you go some distance. I know people that fly in different hemispheres via 4G and stuff.
We've got that car company is going to do BVLOS cars on the roads by FPV. Did you see that? I posted a tweet about it. There's a company setting up. They're going to have, they'll drive your car remotely, or drive a car remotely via FPV beyond visual line of sight on a public highway, and that's okay.
It's always okay with the motor industry because they've got a lot more money, which is what it comes down to.
And we're used to thousands of people dying every year on the road, so what's a few more?
Yeah, unfortunately.
But why would you FPV your car? I don't understand.
Because you don't need a driver then. It becomes a taxi driven by someone in an office. Because self-drive isn't working.
So you can have a call centre in India with all the people driving it on 50 pence an hour, driving cars around other countries.
Well, is it a dodge to get rid of it? Would you put it in an autonomous car, but say, no, there is somebody behind the wheel? They're just not sat behind the wheel.
Yeah. Because you could have multiple autonomous cars with them able to jump in at any point, saying if there's an issue. Although in reality, by the time there's an issue, it's going to be too late. Oh, I should have put the brakes on.
It's because even the drivers don't trust these things. They want to be sitting somewhere else. It's the same with these eVTOLs. That's why they're pilotless. You won't get a pilot going up in them. They know better than to get in one of those things.
Well, the FAA is has already said it wants the standard 1,500-hour ATPL for the initial flight runs, this sort of thing. So it's a massive hours requirement for the first pilots of those things. And they're not going to find them. Those people are going to be jumping into the airlines unless the eVTOL company's prepared to pay as much as the airlines pay. And my word, that'll probably knock the bottom line of those eVTOLs yet again.
Well, that's it. If you look at what
yet,
that Whisper or whatever they are in New Zealand are saying, they're saying like, it's going to be $1 per passenger kilometre or something or other, based on the premise that there won't need to be a pilot. That's one of the single largest ongoing costs. Get rid of them, everything gets cheaper. So yeah, they're not going to pay pilots very much money if they do have them in the initial phases. And again, once again, this is showing how far off we are from this dream that's being floated of eVTOL AAMs, and the venture capitalists will just pull the plug.
Well, Volocopter, John, what's John says? Sitting in the back seat while someone from across country is driving a car is so under. Yeah, well, nothing can go wrong, John. I mean, it sounds like a perfect idea. Absolutely perfect idea to me.
The only real worry is that Elon says that full self-drive will be available this year. Finally.
Yeah, every year he says that.
Yeah.
They'll be saying that in another 15 years.
It's the new Fusion.
You'll be able to buy a Tesla Model 3 and run it as a taxi and make $100,000 a year out of it, just for just the $30,000 investment up front. And this is happening. This is happening this year. What year did he say that? 2017 or something?
Yeah, it's a long time since then. Yeah.
But Renault already bringing out a thing that will remain the property of Renault and go at very low speeds, be fully autonomous, and be a taxi. And it just changes them. So, but Renault's not interested in selling them to anyone. Renault will be the taxi company
running them,
running around.
Have you noticed that there's so many people getting into all these ridiculous promises and pie in the sky with these AAMs and so forth? The only person who hasn't is Elon Musk, because he's outcompeted in terms of hysteria, hype, and fulfilled promises by these people with their drone deliveries and urban mobility. He can't compete with them, and he's the king of it.
Yes. I suppose you're right. Well, the really interesting one will be is the Olympics in Paris next year or the year after. They're quite soon, aren't they? But Volocopter are convinced that they're going to be flying passenger flights in and out of the next Olympics. So if that comes off, maybe. But
yeah, the thing also is we've got to remember, just as in the days of the late 20th century, just because you can do something doesn't mean you're going to make a profit out of it. And you can fly these things, but if you're not making a profit, you're not going to be able to keep flying them. It's not going to be sustainable, and all the investors want their money back.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I hear you. True. Who's just joined us, Mitchell, the date for the UK's original requirement, I think it was 2026, I think.
That's what I thought it was as well.
Yeah, I think it's 2026. And I don't think it's actually been, I think, the CAA have been, as ever, it has been. I have seen it on a document, or I may not have seen it. Somebody's dog saw it on a document and told me about it. But the CAA putting out their request for whatever it is they wanted people to do, it's just kind of like.
It sounds like. It's network, not ID. And I don't know whether this was a genuine comment or facetious, but I think it said it was going to be over 100 million, the cost.
The thing is, why isn't this community, why aren't we a cohesive community that says, we will not accept this until you can give us a business case that proves that the investment by us and yourselves produces a return that is worth that investment. This is like anything that you do in the world requires a business case. Otherwise, you're throwing money down a hole. So where is the business case for remote ID? And they'll say, oh, so we can hold people to account. And then you say, well, how many deaths have been caused where people haven't been held to account? How much property damages are caused where people haven't been held to account? Wouldn't you be better to spend this money on counter UAS or drone detection systems around your airports? Because someone who's going to do that maliciously will not have remote ID fitted. Just point out to them, you have to produce a business case for us, because ultimately we pay for it as taxpayers or as drone operators. Produce the business case that justifies this imposition and removal of freedoms that you're planning to dump on us. And in America, they should have done that and said, look, the role of the FAA is to reduce the risk of aviation to pilots and the general public. You've got standard remote ID, which you acknowledge increases the risk to pilots. Therefore, it is contrary to the guidelines for regulation creation. You have breached your own guidelines by increasing risk through regulation. How can you do that? No one stands up and raises these blatantly obvious points. They all just sit back and go, oh, it's terrible, isn't it? I mean, what's wrong with the world?
So the same will happen here. Is that, well, we'll have to see how it pans out. I mean, The only thing I'm hoping for is in us, going for a different approach to the
We're
US.
not though, because Mitchell mentioned ASTM.
Well,
and
it
it's the
is
ASTM
slightly, because
standard.
that's just localized lower range Bluetooth and whatnot, even though people are going to collect it and put it all together anyway. But I'm just hoping that they've thought and heard the noise from the US about NIMBYs being able to access it. I'm hoping we don't get that. But I do think that if you're going to do this kind of thing, and I can't see that any other thing than the cost being dumped on people again, which pretty poor form, really.
You're right. It was
an industry
100
moving where it,
million pounds.
Yeah. But I think
Maybe,
if you're going to do this, give people additional freedom. Say you're going to have this on, but you're going to get A, B, and C out of it.
well, that's what in the US. In the US, they said, remote ID will enable BVLOS flying. And all the recreational flyers thought, great, we'll do BVLOS. No, you don't count. Recreational, you don't get to do BVLOS with remote ID, but you still have to have remote ID. It's the commercial operators who might get to have BVLOS when you've got remote
to be honest,
ID.
I don't think necessarily that'd be the one to go for. For me, it'd be, you have less things over distances and takeoff.
But is remote ID going to change the risk factors? It's not going to change any of the risk factors.
But you say because you were taking on this remote ID that has, you're giving away your information about your location. You're having to invest more in your drone because it's going to add an additional cost. Even if it's a relatively trivial one, it's still money that's coming out of your pocket. They should say, here's some additional freedoms you can have for the fact, because you're saying, what you can argue is you can say you're being a more responsible drone user in that you're not flying under the radar, both figuratively and literally. You are putting yourself, boom, I'm here. And so as a result of that, you should say, well, when we do airspace restrictions, if you have got remote ID on, you can be disregarded because we can see you're a legitimate user and so on. So you could, if you wanted to, say, well, we're giving you this and you're going to have these benefits. And then people they'd say, well, you know what? I don't really like it. It's a ball ache. It's costing me more. But given I'm getting all this set of benefits, I'll just take it. But it may well be the case that it's not. It's maybe that you're paying this extra money, you're getting this on you, and tough.
Yeah,
but
it is. There's nothing. Well, I can't see anything that remote ID gives you that's going to reduce the risk profile of your operation. So why would you be granted extra privileges that you should have got anyway if there's no change in the risk profile? It's like basically buying you off. But the thing that I looked at in America is if remote ID is going to be a thing, then why have it so that you have to use it everywhere in your own property, in all these places way out in the middle of nowhere? Why not have, as they have with their LANC system, areas where you have to have remote ID? You want to fly here, have to have remote ID. But here, you don't need remote ID. Why don't they take this whole concept of the FRIA and say the whole country's a FRIA except for mandatory remote ID zones, which you have to get your remote ID working before you can fly there? That becomes a much fairer situation, but they haven't. They've said everybody has to have remote ID everywhere. Hopefully the UK might look at it and say, well, we've got the same app that you check before you fly. And if you're in an area that requires remote ID, you'll have to turn your remote ID on. Otherwise, you don't have that burden. And if you don't want to fit remote ID, just fly in the areas where it's not mandated.
No, I agree with that. Again, it's if you do these things where you've got some freedoms, it's like you say you're in the middle of nowhere, you're flying. It's of no benefit. It's just extra data that's not actually going to be utilized anyway. Then why even have it turned on? But if you're going to be, if you're going to be near a football stadium or an airport and so on, then yes, it's got to be turned on. So yeah, if you have flexibility like that, or if you buy people off with freedom, there's nothing wrong with buying people off with extra freedoms. If that
there is.
Wrong. No, there isn't.
There is. It shows that your regulations are overly strict in the first place. They should be based on risk, not on.
I'm sorry. To me, there's nothing wrong by owning up and saying it's not about, without saying it, just saying no. For you to know that you're all conforming and you are going to be there and identifiable, then we will bribe you with some freedoms. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
That's typical government, though, isn't it? They take away a freedom and sell it back to you as a privilege.
Well, they say you never had that freedom. And they wouldn't say we take it away. They'd say you never had that freedom in the first place.
You did before the regulations came in. We had all these freedoms. You could fly BVLOS. You could fly as high as you like.
Yeah. But they just say, well, that you were just lucky then. So,
no, they're stolen freedoms that are being now ransomed.
But the elephant in the room is that
we are where we are.
But it doesn't integrate. So we're talking about aviation safety and things like that. It doesn't integrate with the manned system at all. So if to give us back freedoms, they would have to have a proper integration method into the current air traffic situation, and it's not there. And yes, that is the reason that AirMap, they were all over this. Aircraft was them. And so that was going to be how they were going to be the piece that did that integrated and told air traffic, but there's no willingness to do that. So they sat down now and said, right, okay, well, we really do need some sort of integration plan now. We need to finally rubber stamp this. That'll be 10 years. That'll be 10 years it'll take them to work that out.
And
the
thing is, if a manned aircraft can turn off its ADS-B transmitter in Class G airspace, why can't you turn off your remote ID when it's not necessary?
Because we fly drones, and drones are inherently evil.
Oh, I forgot that bit.
They're either a toy. It depends. We've got to remember, it's another one of the things where they're either a toy or a way of making money. This is the way of making money, and Cool Cats said it. And that's what network flipping remote ID is. Network is the ability to get that micropayment from you, those games that your children play, and oh my word, they just spent 50 quid. And it's gonna be like that for the micropayments. And in that standard, in the ASTM standard, which is the network one, there is that your drone shouldn't take off if it doesn't have a method of connecting to the internet and getting the required permission.
And the really worrying thing about all that is that they're looking at getting this money from drone deliveries and urban air mobility. When that doesn't come to fruition and they've spent all the money, there's only one group left who can pay, and that's the recreational flyers. So those micro payments you talk about not going to be so micro anymore.
Yeah. But of course, what was the license? Not license. The registration in the UK. I think it cost £5 million, something like that.
It was about 4 million quid, but it was something that was a minimum. Literally, it was minimum viable product.
That's before the Raspberry Pi got expensive.
Yeah.
There we go. You bugger! That's exactly what I said. That's exactly where I was going with that, because we've got to remember that the Raspberry Pi is considerably more expensive now, so it's quite easily £100 million project now instead of the £4 million project. Yeah.
And remember, is this driven by the UTM companies who think, well, we've got to get, if all these drones have got remote ID, now there's a justification for us.
There'll be lots of companies with dollar signs absolutely bulging out of their eyes. I bet you've got your Vodafones, your BTs, and everyone. It's all, this is all big money stuff now, where people will be like, this is something that we can really milk those dollars out of. That's where we're at.
We've got to Slaughterbots was death copter. Yes, we've got to start adopting the correct terminology. You're exactly right. Yeah, I don't think. Oh, he's not here to answer, but I'm pretty sure Richard wouldn't have been up for this, and I don't mind if he minds me saying, but he actually considered paying everybody's registration fee when it all started off, because he didn't like that idea either. But there are definitely some overseas companies, and there might be. There's two companies I can think of operating in the UK. That one has an office in Cranfield over a chip shop, and the other one is a sort of a startup. They're probably definitely eyeing those dollar signs.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Matt, remember that's what they wanted to do. Oh, well, it was their second idea, and it didn't work for them, and it won't work for whoever's pushing for it now.
It's going to be interesting in the USA when they launch these remote ID broadcast modules, because I know that the Flight Test Community Association is working on one, and it's got circuit board based antennas for GPS and for the Bluetooth. And so according to the ASTM spec, I believe it has to broadcast to the full capabilities of the technology that's being used. Bluetooth, I reckon you can get a couple of kilometers out of Bluetooth. Not when you have taped that to the arm of your quadcopter so that the Bluetooth antenna is hard up against the carbon. And the unit is certified. It's been accepted by the FAA, or will have been accepted as a means of compliance. And so you, as a naive user, won't know, of course, that taping it to the frame completely reduces the range to a couple of feet. So effectively, this whole thing is a giant joke. You'll be compliant, but it won't make the slightest bit of difference.
That's a good way of looking at it. That's a very positive way. I should have made that the exact, because that would have been a fantastic thing to end on, an hour. And if only I was good at this, that would have been the perfect wording to end on. You're exactly right. You can hobble. It's just like tinfoil on the GPS back in the day, isn't it? You can hobble this quite easily.
I was going to jump in with a point, Gary, just a moment.
Go on.
Just to say, because we give him a lot of grief on Twitter, so it's worth pointing out that Brendan, formerly of DJI, because he's always argued the case both for drone registration and remote ID, but he's always said registration should never have come with a charge. So in the UK, it should have been entirely free. I think it's you're asking people to give their information and give away some freedoms, because you are putting yourself, as we saw at Gatwick, once you're on a database, you are then a target. The police, if something goes on, they're just going to come round to those doors to the people that are on the database. So all that involved, what the hell, we'll absorb the cost. It wouldn't have been such a big deal. And again, with remote ID, that's something that should be done for free or very, very cheap. But we will see what happens.
Could the GDPR come to the rescue, because broadcasting stuff publicly that you should be keeping private, if they try and do that standard remote ID thing with the pilot position? Surely that's a breach of your privacy.
Yeah, I mean, the problem we've got now is because of Brexit and not being part of Europe, they're probably free to water some of that down, where if we're in Europe, it might make it a little bit harder. So we'll have to see how all that pans out. But I think that there is a fair argument here about privacy when, especially if it is the case, it's broadcasting all the time. And the issue that with remote ID was the fact that, if you even turn on your house to do a firmware update, you're saying, hello, I'm here, I'm a drone, and telling everyone. And that, to me, that's where the issues come about, more so than when you're on a job. But there's even issues on the job, as we've discussed before, competitors knowing where you are, what you're up to. It could allow people to poach business potentially, depending how it's all done. But again, when you're storing stuff all remotely, centralized and nationally, that's a lot of data. And again, the fear is cyber attack, amount of data that can be taken by individuals now in one go. When you've got your database with that much information, it's a hell of a lot of data. And unfortunately, data, the reality is that all of it will in some form or another at some time get misused. Your most trusted people, you'll get your bad apples. So we see it with CCTV operators that abuse the power. We see it with civilian police staff that abuse the power. We see it with fully fledged police officers where they'll use a police national computer. Once you put all that data in there, somebody will at some point misuse it as well. So these are the concerns we should still all have. But ultimately, a lot of this we're going to have to put up with in some way, shape, or form.
I think we should have to mandate remote ID on party balloons and shopping bags as well. Otherwise, we're going to leave gaps in this thing.
Yeah. It's just not fit for purpose, is it? You can't make it useful. It doesn't increase safety. It just takes $50 out of people's pockets. That's all it does.
More than $50 if you got more than one craft, and they're not. In fact, also there isn't a $50 module available for non-flight controlled models yet. For the good old standard radio control foam Piper Cub, it's not $50. It's over $100 US.
And have we seen any almost ready to fly complying yet?
No. And what I don't know why the FAA hasn't clamped down on that, because Horizon Hobby is still selling the FMS Super Easy with transmitter, battery, the whole thing. Take it out of the box and fly it. It's complete, ready to fly, no standard remote ID. They may claim, it was made before the 16th of September, last year, but that's getting hard to sustain, isn't it? I mean, I would. Why isn't the FAA going in and saying, okay, show us the shipping receipts, show us the manufacturing things? If they want to actually enforce this, then they've got to actually enforce it, or they can't expect high levels of compliance. What worries me is they'll pick some poor little guy who gets caught flying a toy in a park, and they'll throw the book at him to put a chilling effect. And that's where these rules are really, really bad.
You see plenty of people rushing to comply now in America and asking about it and worried about it.
Yeah, the worrying thing is that people say, "Oh, I'll never comply." Like a lot of people said, "I'll never register," and most of them registered. They talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. They're not prepared to actually take a stand. They'll until it comes to the moment. Oh, I don't want to get a fine. Yeah, here's my money. Here's my freedoms. Here's my rights. You can have them.
It's quite. I find it quite amusing that the BMFA Free Flight Nationals came up in my video feed this week. I mean, well, when they are dead.
A mil 75 to the side of the head.
Exactly, that's right. Yes. We also had very sharp spinners on those things.
Yeah.
But, you just wonder how they're ever going to be allowed to continue as well. It's just they don't make a noise, no pun intended, in a lot of ways. Oh, look, here's Squishy. How you doing, Squishy? Yeah. Look, so we've gone over the hour. So what else have we seen before we go? Anything else interesting?
Yes, Apple Vision Pro. Are we going to go FPV with the Apple Vision Pro? It's only what, $3,500? Yeah, cheap as beans, mate.
Cheap as beans. Yeah, with dozens of sensors and apparently really amazing eye tracking.
You'll be able to fly by looking.
Apparently. Yes, and if you've got a Mac, you can look at your Mac and it'll pick up that you're working on your Mac. I didn't quite understand that. So you've got this device that's a massive computer, and then you're going to use another computer to do some work. Why do you need two computers then?
It's only the display side, but the thing is, I wrote a column about it this morning, and I said it's one of those things that everyone's going to want to buy one. Anyone who can afford to buy one will buy one, and within 6 months, you'll put it in the wardrobe with your Abdominizer and your NutriBullet and all those KTEL things you bought from TV in the 80s, things that have a really great wow factor. You buy them. This is fantastic. And then you realize it's fantastic, but it's not really that practical, because one of the selling points in the Apple video was, you can watch your favorite movie and in a virtual environment, which is like you can be in a forest or on a beach or something, and there's the big screen in front of you because it virtualizes everything. And I'm thinking, well, when I watch a really good movie, I'm totally unaware of the room around me. It's not like I'm going to be seeing any of this virtual environment. I'm focused on the story. And then when you invite, if you've got a family of 5, for instance, let's watch television. Okay, what's 5 times $3,500? Because everyone will need a headset. And then you'll notice when they show them using the FaceTime, and the people are there and the person's got the goggles on, the FaceTime picture up there. Why don't any of them have goggles on? If it's so good, why is there only the one person wearing the goggles? But if you do wear the goggles and go on FaceTime, it has an artificial intelligence created avatar of you, which looked really, really creepy. So I think people will buy these things, they'll use them, and then they'll get relegated to, I wish I hadn't spent all that money on these things. I'd much rather buy a new car.
Yeah, I already agree. I didn't understand a lot of it. I didn't understand where it was going to fit into my life.
It'll be the next Google Glass.
The next Google Glass. Well, I get the idea of augmented reality. I get the idea of if you're fixing an aeroplane or fixing whatever, and the manual comes up, and then also over. I can see where that would go, and that's have to be a massively complicated technology. But I think.
But Google Glass delivered that. But it just did, there was trouble is we're solving problems that don't in reality actually exist. It's pretty easy to hold a manual or have a tablet with a manual on it. You don't need to have that sitting in midair above whatever you're working on. You've got to have a lot of extra value for people to do this, because it just makes life so difficult. Devil. And how can someone look over your shoulder at the manual if you're the only one that can see the manual? There's all these little things in the real world that destroy this utopian bliss that the Apple video creates.
Well, John really he nailed it. Said that the eye, because I've heard that the eye tracking is like magic, and it's for ad companies. And there we are. That's the entire review. We need no further review on that thing. That's exactly right. Google Glass. Yes, Drone Pilot mentioned Google Glass.
The only upside is it would be like the Epson system, where you wouldn't have to have a observer to fly FPV because you can see through the glasses.
Yes,
so
you can see it. Yes,
that's worth $3.5 grand. It cost me 10 grand on occasion when Arnie turns up, so that would save me money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, fair enough. Would a 5-camera drone over a nudist beach be considered an intrusion, says Rev? Well,
depends if your props came off, I suppose.
We solve problems that in Microsoft, Google. Yeah, we do solve problems that don't exist all the time. That's a bane of mankind, isn't it? I think. Yeah, I saw that thing and thought, meh, but then I think meh about an awful lot of stuff. So,
yeah, if you had that money sitting around doing nothing, you'd probably buy it just for the wow, for that 1 week of wow that was followed by a lifetime of buyer's remorse. Because some people had that sort of money and they thrive. In fact, Neil flies with us at the airfield. I mean, he's got a Tesla. He bought a Mac M1. He's got Apple Watch, all the Apple Watches, iPhone. He'll probably buy one because he can afford it and he'll get some pleasure from it. But for certainly not a mass market product. Because you look at the Oculus, the Meta thing, that's $500 for the same sort of function. Not as polished as Apple, of course, but it's been a giant flop. The metaverse hasn't taken off, this whole virtual reality thing. The people working at Meta aren't using them, It's that bad.
It's like what was that thing, Second Life and all that. We're supposed to all be living in Second Life now, aren't we? And with our
so a lot of money that went into that as well. People buying it as like real estate. It was mental, and then obviously it all just vanished. And that's the trouble as well with a lot of the online world these days. People buying. So I've even done it a bit with games. You should just never do it. Is buying. You're buying just virtual. You're buying nothing. Yeah. And the worst thing is, you might be there, you might play a game and then they'll just cancel it, remove the servers, and all that stuff vanishes. You don't even get stuff carrying on. I know with Steam they've been all right. I think like with the Counter-Strike they've allowed stuff to carry across. But I was an early adopter of VR as well, and it's good and well. But I tried to do it like
it's not like NFTs, eh? NFTs are the future.
No, NFTs are immediate. The thing I hate is. I've had a bit of a laugh about them occasionally on Twitter, but you can't because there's bots out there. They're just looking for the word NFT, and suddenly you just get loads of spam and going, "You want to buy NFTs?" And that. So I've learned even if you want to have fun about something, you can't mention it. I did the same with hot tubs. I think they're very chav. But I mentioned hot tubs, and then I was bombarded with hot tub ads for months. It was like a punishment. So if something annoys you, don't mention it because it'll think you want to buy them. But anyway,
I had press research that I did run that mentioned blockchain, Bitcoin, and something else. It's a long time since I've had. It was the Holy Trinity. I can't remember what the third one was now of stuff. And it's like as soon as you see these things, it's like no.
I have seen blockchain being used with an eVTOL.
Yeah, so, it's obvious.
Which that particularly makes me. I need to find that.
That shows how desperate the companies are to retain venture capital funding. They pivot. One of the things with these companies is like, let's look at the one. What is it? The one I pilloried recently. I can't remember the name of it now. They will be pivoting soon. They've already pivoted slightly away from the original craft to a bigger craft, but they will pivot. Just like Martin Jetpack pivoted. They pivoted away from making jetpacks to giving people rides on jetpacks, and then because when the initial thing you've sold your promise on can't be realized, you say, oh, we can't do that, but we can do this, and this is even better, and they hopefully keeping the investors on board. So look for some pivoting in the eVTOL market pretty soon.
The thing that's worth looking at, if you look at one of EHang's latest video, they've used AI. So they've tried to say the craft is AI. It's like, that is such bullshit. So basically they're trying to say that but
it should be that three duffers can just say spot these buzzwords and then it's trouble.
Yes.
And why aren't we venture capitalists or something? I don't understand.
Because we've got no money.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that'll be it. That'll be it. No, but how do venture? I don't understand how venture capitalists, if they fall for these things every time, how they can make any money.
But no, they'd make money because they look at these high sizzle factor things that are easy to sell, sound flashy, like, ooh, flying taxi, pilotless flying taxi, drone delivery, throw money into that. And then they structure the company so they then hire someone who's a figurehead in the industry, like they've done with Lilium, bring in people with names like former Airbus, executives on the company, and then they float it. And that's when they get their money out. Before the product's ever made, they get their money out because they sell the shares that they bought $1, paid $1 for. They sell them for $10 when the company floats. They've got 10 times the return. Then the people who bought those shares, they carry the losses when it all falls apart. It happens every time.
Sean is so cutting. He's such a cutting bloke, that Sean bloke. He's so cutting. I've never read that book. Yeah. Just poor. I'm just the poor part. Someone else could be the rich one. It's fine.
I'm gonna say I did get a finish on my VR thing, and I have to say that it did. When you get in, you think, "Oh wow, this is really cool" at first, but part of the problem is it's not just hardware; it's software, and that's often where it falls down. There just isn't the software there that's really cool. Everything's more like a demo, and it's great for half an hour, but then it's like, well, I'm bored now. And even that whole thing of wearing something on your head all the time, hassle. And even when saying, well, it's not connected, I don't care. It's still I didn't mind having the wire and that, but we don't have houses and spaces big enough, so there's no point having your virtual reality and moving about because you can't move very far, and all you end up doing is almost breaking your arms and stuff.
No, because then you have a virtual house, a virtual mansion, and your screen's inside the virtual mansion. But the problem is on a hot summer's night when you're sweating like mad, having that over your face, I mean, it's going to be a totally uncomfortable experience. It's bad enough with FPV on a hot day.
Yeah, I mean,
I do that. The online sailplane flying and racing, and do that twice a week sometimes. And the chaps, one of the things that quite often happens with the chaps that got those VR headsets is they start flying and it's daytime in the UK and it becomes nighttime and they haven't switched the light on in the bedroom or wherever it is they're using it. It goes dark and then they lose. Then that's them out the game. They lose the they lose the tracking of the headsets. That's happened loads of times.
I know somebody that almost ended up with a divorce from the use of a VR headset as well. You can imagine why.
I can imagine why. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's tracking your hands.
Have they got I'm using them? Yeah, they must have.
And the other thing is the battery only lasts up to 2 hours. You look at a lot of the modern movies, they're 2.5, 3 hours, some of them. So you get just to the highlight of the movie and it says low battery and then that's the end.
Yeah, I saw someone making a comment about using, this kind of, is it AR or whatever they call it, where it's a
augmented reality.
Yeah. But you can't, because I got fairly early on, I got some glasses that would go over your eyes and they do the FPV screen and that, but you can't do that because your eyes can't focus on two planes. Once you can't be looking at that there close up to you, and you can't be looking at your drone as well. You're going to focus
like heads-up displays in cars.
Yeah, and if you try,
a great idea.
Yeah, if you try and flick quickly between the two, you actually get a really bad headache because your eyes just can't work that fast. So all that stuff's nonsense. You can't have a HUD quickly, close up here to your eyes and be looking at something as well. You can only use it as an FPV headset, and then what's the point? You might as well be using an FPV headset.
Yeah, but then those heads-up displays on cars are the same. The windscreen's only like a half a meter away from, or less than a meter away from your eyes, so it's got a totally different focal length to the road ahead. So you still have to change your focal length to see what's on. Might as well look at the dashboard.
Yeah, it's again solving problems that don't really exist.
Yeah,
all around. Yeah, I mean, if your headsets, if you're connected to a camera that's on the drain robot going where your head's not going to fit, then that's quite useful. A useful different sort of display. It's only a different display to a flat screen, isn't it? But but if you've got the opportunity to turn and things like that, then maybe
just buy a 65-inch OLED screen and stand really close.
4 hours with is squishy, yes, question, but it wasn't $3,500, Sean. I mean, that's going to be a pain point, isn't it? Oh well, that's monocular jet pilot. That's monocular disparity, and that's particular. The Apache pilots have to be able to do that. They look through a monocle with one eye and look down another, but not everybody can do that, and you've got to train to do that. That's not a pick it up and it's going to happen skill. But yeah, it's Apache guys that are very into that. And then of course their headsets now, they've got the cameras that allow them to look down past their feet outside the aircraft, which is pretty cool. But yeah, they're probably a bit more expensive than a $3,500 Apple one. Perhaps, maybe. I'm just thinking.
But some disgruntled engineer will leave a company and develop it separately at a much lower price with all that mil-spec technology.
When the patent runs out, I should imagine.
When the patent runs out,
Something
yes,
like that.
yes, that'll be it.
Yeah. yes.
Oh
yes.
dear.
Oh, yeah, and Sean's exactly saying about our prawn. Very, very good way of getting around the. Well done.
Oh, he's
Oh,
gone.
he's back. Oh, is he?
He's gone. He's disappeared.
Oh,
He's back
Disappeared
again.
and I've reappeared. That's a clue. That's a clue. It's an hour
Yeah.
into it's the word prawn. It was the word prawn. I'm
It
blaming
was,
Sean.
yeah. Censored.
It is. I'm blaming him. All right, so let's go. It's time to go. Must be my internet going or something. This emergency lights work well. Dear viewer, wherever you are in the world, look after yourselves. We'll see you again 2100 GMT next week, and we hope to have some people to tell us more about drone trespass and remote ID in the UK. Look after yourselves. We'll see you next week. Cheers for now. Bye bye.